Hello, everybody. This is your host, Aram Melkoumov, and you're listening to another episode of Product Innovation Series. Every week, the guests that we have on our show share their stories and wisdom on how to ship a great product. But this episode that we have today is a bit more different, as we have a leader in speech recognition and deep learning with us today. He's going to talk about how they work, how they evolve, how they'll evolve into the future, and a little bit about the product itself. So really happy to welcome Miguel, who's the head of AI and R&D at Revcom. Rev is a very well known in the world as a black belt in audio, video transcription and captioning. Miguel is also the co-founder of Temi.com that does speech recognition and machine learning. And over the last 15 years, his focus has been mostly in speech recognition systems. So he's kind of an expert in the space. So without further ado, Miguel, it's a pleasure to have you and welcome to the show.
No, thanks. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So I'll just kick it off. First question I have, you've been working on speech recognition since 2006, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so, over this time, you've probably seen the evolution of the technology, of the industry change over this time. What do you think the majority of people commonly misunderstand about speech recognition?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I've been in the industry for since 2006. I think the biggest thing that people the biggest misconception is that it feels very easy. Like it feels very easy, especially things like speaker diarization, like where in speech recognition you have to transcribe the words, but sometimes you also have to know when different speakers are speaking in the audio. And a lot of these things that we do as humans, they feel easy, and it's hard to understand why the machine like makes mistakes, and so I find it fascinating to look at it from the other side, because there are things that we do so well. Our brain is amazing, and they're actually quite difficult to do with a machine. Yeah, it's kind of a generic answer, but I think in general, like those AI things, they're much harder to do well than you would think.
And so, not to get like too technical on my next question, but like obviously there's some sort of AI or algorithms that power the speech recognition. Is there kind of any secret about it, or like how is the tech at Rev.com different maybe from other things that you've come across? What makes it? How does the AI components stand out to create better speech recognition?
Yeah. I think there are three. There's basically two elements, I would say, for every AI system. One is the tech, the engine, or the code that runs everything, and the type of models you're training, all that stuff, right? And there are secrets there. There are like better algorithms. There are better, there are better engines that are faster, and so on. And I think at Rev we have, really good tech. But the bigger thing by far in all of AI is always data. And basically that's the secret sauce. That's, like if you have the right data, your models are going to be that much better. And for us at Rev, we have the right data because we've been, a transcription company for 11 years, right? So we've, over the time, accumulated a lot of examples of audios and their transcripts and how people speak and so on. And so it was pretty natural for Rev to start looking into speech recognition as a problem. Well, especially given that, speech recognition is getting better and better, and may kind of like change the market of transcription in general. But yeah, so I'd say the secrets is mostly in the data, and that's maybe something that's misunderstood too from the outside. You kind of think of AI as like these really cool fancy algorithms, and but in reality probably 80% of the work is in understanding your data, managing your data, preparing it for your models, and so on. So yeah, it's less cool or sexy maybe, but that's a big part of the answer.
Yeah. Okay. So, being the head of AI R&D, what does that job really entail? Like, are you looking at a bunch of data a lot, trying to improve it? Like, what's like your day to day kind of look like?
Yeah, so I mean, I started at Rev. My job was to look at the data we've accumulated over the years and see, see what we can do with the data and see how we can improve the systems that we have in place, the products we have in place already. So I would say my job is to kind of like repeat that process, and so we've done it for speech recognition and we want to keep improving it. So I lead, I'm the director of the speech R&D team at Rev, and my job is to improve speech recognition there. But on top of it is for me to keep looking at the data that we have at Rev and looking at other opportunities. One for fun, one other opportunity is we do a lot of subtitling, which is probably really good data for translation because you have, subtitles in English that are then translated by, humans into Spanish or Italian and so on. And so, what can we do with that data? Can we improve our product there? Can we make people more productive? Can we improve the quality? So, yeah,
Okay.
so maybe a lot of meetings also, to meet with the different people
Of course.
that have all that deal with that data on a daily basis. So meetings with product, meeting with business leaders to make sure we're going in the right direction.
Okay. And so, just out of curiosity, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a very interesting space for sure. Don't get me wrong, but what excited you? So, what excited you to be in this space for 15 years? Like,
Hmm.
why the passion?
Ah, good question. I mean, I studied mathematics at university, and my master's was in evolutionary theory. So quite unrelated to speech recognition, but I think what was interesting to me there was this like statistics and probabilities, and try in evolutionary theory, at least what I was studying. Yeah, you're always interested in studying sequence of events,
Mm.
and so trying to either understand what happened in the past or trying to predict what will happen in the future. And in speech recognition, you have that same sort of problem, and I think going back to a comment I made earlier, I find it fascinating because it seems like such an easy thing that we do, like as a kid, we learn to speak and, almost everybody can, do speech recognition, like some people unfortunately can't, but, yeah, I just found it a fascinating field. And, I guess I just never really looked back. I joined Nuance in 2006 with a good friend of mine, JP there. And yeah, the problem has always fascinated me. So I kind of kept going. Funny fact, actually, like now JP works with me at Rev. So we've gone full
Okay.
circle there.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. I always love speaking to people who are passionate about it, and for them or for me, when I look at it, it's like you lose track of time in
Hmm.
terms of like when you love something, it's just like something you don't even think about how much time you spend on something. It's just you love it, and time flies by.
Yeah, I think,
Um,
sorry to interrupt, but I think that's very true, and the exciting part is that the field has grown so much in the last 15, 16 years, that it kind of kept it exciting. I think if I was in a field where things hadn't moved for 15 years, it would be a different story. But like, just things got so exciting in speech and AI in general.
So talking about, it's a great segue. I had a question I wanted to ask you about this. I mean, there's so much, there's been so much change or whatever evolution in speech recognition over the last years that you've been involved with. I've come across, different types of documents saying about what the future of speech is going to look like in the tech industry. Specifically, lots of people talk about something called voice UI, where, everything's voice driven from car commands to whatever, Alexa and all these kind of things. And like maybe the future might look like that we just talk to everything. I actually know somebody who literally doesn't use the app on his phone if he can't talk to it.
That's amazing.
So yeah, so my question is like, where do you think we're gonna go in the next 5-10 years, like in this industry? Like, what's next?
Great question. I actually spent a good part of this week writing an article about where I think we're going to be in 10 years. I hope to publish soon. Uh, it, I think the trend will continue. I do think that we're gonna be able to interact with stuff more with our voice. To be honest, like that's not what excites me the most. Like I actually, I don't know if this is terrible to say, but I don't own a voice, like speaker at home or anything like that. But what I like about speech is that it makes things more accessible, So, for example, the interview we're doing now, will be transcribed, and in some cases, sometimes it's done in a live fashion using speech recognition. Um, I find that amazing, and I think that that will continue to grow and explode over time. Making a lot of videos and a lot of content that was not findable online or searchable, all of a sudden searchable. So I think in that sense, I find that very exciting, and I think that's going to keep growing for sure. We see a lot of customers at Rev doing the same, following the same trend. But the other thing I would say that I think is going to happen is because we're going to use speech more and more, the whole idea of bias will become much more important, making all these systems more, fairer and more accessible for people. I have a French accent that's maybe not so bad, but like for some people, speech rec works better than for other, for sure. And there's a lot of effort made by a lot of commercial, ASR companies in that direction, including Rev. And then the other thing I'll say is that I think will happen is these systems, as they become used by more and more people, will become more multilingual. And I think that's a really exciting direction. A lot of people mix languages. I don't know if you're the same, but I mix French and English all the time at home. And I feel like if we're going in this voice-driven UI world more, it just makes sense for things to be more multilingual.
So, do you mean that speech and voice recognition should be able to like pick up all the different, have like a multilingual capabilities and be able to dynamically understand?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Like I think people refer to it as code switching, but yeah, if you watch Netflix, there are a bunch of shows like I remember watching a show where the people speak English and Indian or English and Spanish, like in the same sentence.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I noticed that in some of the transcriptions in like movies and shows, they just like don't even pick up that part in the subtitles or in the transcription because they just like skip it and then just
Yeah.
move on until they start speaking English again. That's really true.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say is with the technology that we have right now, what's like the biggest challenge or roadblock that's holding us back to get to what you're talking about?
Um, I think maybe it goes back to the data that we were talking about earlier. It's always kind of a chicken and egg situation in AI. You know, if you're trying to build a product that doesn't exist, but the ideal situation is you start with the data. But if the product doesn't exist, then you know where do you get the data? So there's definitely a lot of research done right now in better algorithms that can generalize better to different accents or different languages. You know, maybe you can do some Google searches, but about it after. But there are, you know, research group at Facebook that look into that stuff, and we're certainly looking at it at Rev too. So the algorithms can get better at generalizing for sure, but the data is definitely tricky to obtain. I think that's probably always the biggest hurdle.
No, it's interesting. Um, you I have this in the back of my head, but you said before that there's a lot of video content that isn't transcribed, but there's a ton of content there that I think could be rendered finally one day to being searchable and indexable. That's like a mountain of data, I think, that could get this type of like data that you might need in the future. But no, I'm interested by like when that could happen, because I think there's so much great knowledge shared in videos which are just like not available in search these days still.
Yeah, I think you know, we talk to customers all the time about, and some that are massive, you know, like if you can imagine companies like BBC, or you know, like the companies that have a ton of archive videos, that would be really interesting to be able to search and index. And you know, there's a lot of knowledge there that's lost for sure, or that's hard to find. Yeah, there. I think maybe it's happening more now because ASR is getting one quite better than it used to, and therefore indexing these videos is getting more affordable, you know. So maybe 10-15 years ago it would have been really costly, but
Yeah.
now ASR is getting better and a bit cheaper than it used to, and you know, so it therefore becomes a bit more accessible for these tasks.
Okay, no, it's very cool. I mean, one day hopefully we'll get there. Imagine
Yeah,
all the videos in the world indexed
yeah, it
of the
would be really
gold
cool.
mine of knowledge. Yeah. Previously, when we had a chance to connect, you mentioned that some of the larger tech giants like Amazon, Apple, and others are starting to really use deep learning for their speech recognition. Just to kind of, in layman's terms, can you explain to our listeners what deep learning is or how
Yeah,
it's being applied in those companies?
yeah, yeah. It's super simple. Well, so first, I guess, first thing that's important to know is that there's in math there's a thing called the universal approximation theorem. So that was, you know, really fleshed out more in the 90s. This is the idea that a neural network, you can look it up after what the neural network is exactly, but a neural network is known as the best universal approximation tool that there is in math. So that means that it can basically approximate any function. And so speech recognition is a function. You know, you take an audio and you get words out. And so therefore, you know, basically a neural network can approximate speech recognition in theory perfectly. And deep learning is just this branch of study that evolved out of this idea that neural nets are amazing. And it's called deep because a neural net can have different layers, you know, and so if you imagine a neural net is a bunch of, they call them neurons, but a bunch of little functions that are connected all together. And so the more layers you add, the deeper the neural net is. And so deep learning, you know, took its name from that concept. And so uh, it just kind of took off in the last few years, I think, because, well, deep neural networks require a lot of data. And so the big companies like, Amazon and Google, Apple and stuff, they add a lot of data, but also requires a lot of compute power. So that also means money, so if you have a lot of money, you can kind of explore the field more. But now it became a bit more accessible because of tools like AWS and, that have a lot of compute power that's more affordable. And so, yeah, deep learning is being applied to everything. Speech recognition is even lagging behind a little bit in terms of deep learning, of the impact of deep learning. You can see it in things like the GTP. I always mix that up.
GTP3?
Yeah, GTP3, or self-driving cars and stuff like that. They all use the same deep learning things. So computer vision and text processing, NLP it's called, use deep learning a lot. Right?
What about in voice? Like, where
Yeah.
is that being used?
Yeah, so in voice, so it's being used a lot more now, and I would think in the last 2 years we're starting to see a lot of commercial ASRs being released with deep learning. I think Google was using deep learning before everybody, probably before everybody else, but now I know, Alexa has released a deep learning model recently. We're in the middle of releasing our we call it V2 model, but it's based on deep learning, and it's really incredible because the accuracy that you can achieve with these models is incredible. For our recent model, we're seeing 25% relative improvement, so a quarter fewer errors, right?
Wow, it's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah.
And I mean, Rev is a great example, but where do you see, from a consumer market perspective, that really getting applied potentially?
Well, like, in general, all the like everything that uses voice will improve, right? So, like I said, Alexa and so on using deep learning. So, um, where else? I mean, everywhere you can use your voice, right? Like,
Yeah,
there's so many places now, but they're all gonna. I mean, if they haven't, they're all gonna move, I think, to a sort of deep learning. Well, and in fact, I don't know. Deep learning is funny too because we always kind of used neural nets in the past before. It's just, I think the word deep learning means a lot of different things for different people. So deep learning has been used,
extensively.
yeah, extensively already in many applications.
Okay. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, like, even the search, like searching on Google, or image search. I don't know if you've ever used the reverse image search on Google. Uses computer vision and deep learning to
Yeah.
work. Hmm.
Yeah, I want to see if I could put like a voice and see if it was ever said by anybody else or something like that.
Yeah, speaking of indexing all videos and stuff,
Yeah,
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 you could do stuff like
yeah.
that. Yeah, you could think of really weird, like strange applications that you could do, or search for someone's voice. Also, like if you want to search and find all the videos that where Obama spoke, maybe you could put an audio of Obama in a search bar, and it returns to you all
That'd be
the
amazing.
videos. Yeah, that'd be cool.
W- I mean, deepfakes is another one I think that's being used quite a bit now, especially in the news.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
I mean, that's a
yeah.
scary use case, I would say, but I
Yeah,
mean, applicable, right?
totally, totally. Deep fakes have been, yeah, like they exist thanks or no thanks to deep learning. It's an interesting field though because a few years ago I met a group of researchers. I'm sorry I don't remember where they're from, but they were working on the inverse, so like every time you see these things, it's like hackers, like hackers push the boundary, and then you've got like security people that are also very smart, and so in the deepfake world, you got people like creating deepfake voices and videos. You have a whole other group of people in research industry looking at ways to counter that, right, or detect it. So they were working on ways to detect whether a voice was a fake voice or not. And the example they had taken was this company in the UK that had been hacked, through voice, because they had faked the voice of their CEO and then called the office and had the office wire money to a bank account, but it was all a fake voice.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so they worked on, software to detect, whether, and I think their plan was to have some sort of app on the phone that would say, hey, I think you're talking to a robot, right? So it is kind of frightening, but thankfully a lot of people are working on the other side too. So I was trying to reassure you that,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's true. There's always somebody fighting the other side of like the problem, which is great. We
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
need the balance, right?
exactly. Pushes the boundary, and it's interesting.
Next question I have, Miguel, is about kind of the work you're doing at Rev.com. So if I understand correctly, like you guys are using speech recognition for your own internal use, people doing human editing of like the transcripts, but also external customers like me using it to do the transcriptions of like these type of podcasts. Based on like all these like decision making or like these review of like how the data is being used, how do you look at it from like a product roadmap perspective in terms of prioritizing the right kind of features that need to be like looked at? So like you talked about like V2 for the of the products, which is going to have a 25% improvement. What are some of these like other things that you look at to determine what things to build next?
Yeah. In the very narrow sense, I think for my R&D team, the North Star is always accuracy, and I always say like, yeah, it's nice to work on other things, but truthfully, people care about the product being as accurate as possible. And so we're always working on accuracy. So that's kind of always on the roadmap. But now that we have the luxury of having real customers, and so we have real feedback, and some people are asking for different things. Definitely the multilingual, at least like the other languages, is becoming something that we focus on. So the roadmap is built from talking to customers, internal and external, because our team serves also internal customers, at Rev. Um,
How does
and
that work?
so,
Sorry, I didn't mean
yeah.
to. Yeah. How do you use Rev for your internal customers, and who are they?
What I mean there is that the speech recognition team is, the product that we deliver, which is the speech recognition models and engine, is used internally at Rev. So, because Rev has a marketplace where that employs, real people, like Revers, we call them, and in fact, it's our mission to create work at home jobs for people. So. It's definitely crucial for us to maintain that. But one way to make them more productive is to use ASR first, so that people don't start with a blank page, so when they start transcribing a video like the one maybe we're going to transcribe today, they won't start with a blank page. They'll start with a first draft, we call it. And so that, so in that sense, Rev.com is a customer to my team. And so, yeah, and then a lot of feature requests come from there, or bug requests. Yeah, so yeah, we build a roadmap like that, but we're an R&D team, so we try to remain flexible, so we certainly have what we call moonshots, or some people, I think they call them third horizon projects, that are more long-term kind of visionary things like the multilingual maybe is one of them. And then we also just work on like things on a quarterly basis. And yeah, so right now, for example, we're doing French and Spanish. Like we're doing a big push on French and Spanish ASR to improve the accuracy. Um, yeah,
And so,
so
and so how does that work? So when you want to go into the multilingual space, then you have to find revers, right? Who would be speaking, you know, mother tongue, I guess, like Spanish and French, and then they're just going to be doing the transcriptions or reviewing the ASR transcriptions, um, and then giving that feedback or the improvement points or whatever back to the system. Is that right?
yeah, so I mean, in any AI company actually has like kind of um, three choices, I guess, when they when they want to build its product. You buy the data, so there are providers out there that will sell you ASR training data. It's quite expensive, and there are better providers and not so good, I guess. But so you can buy the data. Some companies, what they do is they'll offer a free product. Like Google is very classic example where they'll put a product in beta, but truthfully, what they're doing is collecting data in the back end, right? And then at Rev, we have this setup where our product is the byproduct of our product is data collection, right? So as you said, one of the ways we can collect data for Spanish, let's say, is we start a marketplace for Spanish transcription with Revers. So we're doing a bit of an hybrid for our team right now, where we're buying some data, we're collecting some data with Revers also.
Interesting. What does that buying of data look like? Like, what are you buying specifically? Just a whole bunch of conversations?
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange. Yeah, it's true. It's a bit of a strange thing for people who don't do that work every day. So it depends. Some companies are, they specialize in creating data for you. So if you say, you know, you're working on a project where you want to do speech recognition in a car, you'll go to these companies. One big one is Appen, another one is Define.AI, and they will literally hire people to drive around in a car and record themselves talking, and then they will transcribe it. And so they will give you this audio with the transcription so that you can take the audio and transcript and build an AI product. So there are these, but there's also just other companies that you can send your data, your own audio from your app and get it transcribed, right? Like Rev, basically,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, so there's a few different things out there, and it's a whole big industry now, AI data. There's a lot of transcription. It's not even transcription; it's a data company, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I see a great use case. I think it's already out there in the market, but call centers to be able to do speech recognition or text recognition on conversations that are happening in the sales front, like tone and verbiage used, like so that we can improve like call qualities, and that's all basically transcribing it, understanding the words that were used in the call, and seeing if it's like the right word that should be used, if it's
Yeah.
negative or positive, right? So
Oh yeah, that's a huge market that a lot of people are playing in. We have a few customers that use our solution for that, and there are companies that are highly focused on call centers that also do bless you. That
thank you.
also do insights, and like on top of everything, you can analyze how angry someone might be, or
Hmm.
like the intent of the call. And then some companies have really sophisticated UI that shows, the agent maybe like suggests what to do next, right, during the call, so that
That's pretty cool.
um,
Do you know the name of that company?
Yeah. So the friend of mine is the research manager there. The company is called ASAP,
ASAP.
ASAPP, and they do. So they're doing a pretty cool product there. Yeah. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of interesting live use cases like that for sure.
No,
Yeah, and
it's very interesting.
yeah, emotion detection is a really big topic right now in AI. And speaking of deep learning and use cases, like trying to detect someone's emotion using their speech. Uh, some people use language, like using the text, but you can also use obviously like the audio and the speech because there's a lot of information there that doesn't go into the text, right?
For sure, yeah. I mean, you could get a very different type of uh, understanding of a tone if it's just like through the voice or through the text, right?
Yeah, totally. As as we try to make things more accessible through, if you think about accessibility for people who can't hear, what a great feature, if you can also convey,
Oh yeah,
like the emotion of the speaker, because if you're just reading in caption, you don't know, right?
no, for sure.
Hmm.
Which is a my last question I have, which is a great one, is what's like the most exciting thing you see that you're interested in the future to come out in tech? It could be anything. It could be something, you're doing a rev. It could be, I don't know, titanium iPhone 15. I don't know.
Yeah, good question. Yeah. I feel obliged to talk a bit about speech, but I'll give you two answers. For speech wise, I think the whole multilingual approach and the whole one model or one ASR API or system for everything,
Hmm.
as I find that really fascinating. And we were talking about GPT-3 earlier. That whole kind of like approach, but for language, for ASR. I think that would be, if that happens, that would be really cool. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about contributing there to the field, and hopefully Rev be the first place where you see this product live. So that would be cool. The whole other side of me is almost in contradiction and in a weird way to deep learning, because I'm also really excited about clean tech and like technology that works to help global warming and stuff like that. So um, there is a company here in Squamish actually that studies how to um, take carbon dioxide from the air, and like recycle it.
Mm.
I think like some sort of technology like that is also super exciting. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm.
Great examples.
Yeah, I think I used to be more of a product guy. I guess I'm working too much. So I don't have time to like play with gadgets anymore. But
No, no, that's
yeah,
great.
those two things are probably like the most exciting things for me right now.
Awesome, awesome. Great. Miguel, it was a real pleasure and privilege having you on our show. And thank you for sharing your experience and your thoughts. And to all of our listeners, thank you as always for tuning in, listening, supporting us, and following us. So we'll be back with another episode soon. Miguel, thank you so much. Until next
Mhm.
time.
Thanks.